Welcome to All Sorts Podcast. Where we kind of sift through all that noise out there and try to find those little aha moments. And today we're going to be diving deep into a world that's both cozy and surprisingly complex: DIY natural candles.
Ooh, cozy.
Yeah, right? It's like that warm glow and those amazing scents. But have you ever stopped to think about what's actually in that burning wax?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Turns out making your own candles, it's actually way more than just a fun little afternoon project.
Yeah, it's true. There's this whole hidden world of ingredients in those commercial candles that most people don't even realize. And, the more you learn about it, the more DIY starts to make sense.
Yeah, for sure. So our deep dive today is inspired by this blogger named Brooke Kristen. Her blog is called Nesting with Grace, and she breaks down this whole natural candle thing using, get this, a crock pot.
Really? A crock pot?
I know, right? I was a little skeptical at first, too. Like crock pots and candles, not exactly two things I'd naturally put together.
I know. It does sound a little too simple, doesn't it?
It does. But what's interesting is how this method kind of fits into this larger trend of simplifying healthy living. Like we're all used to DIY cleaners and, homemade bread and that sort of thing.
Right.
But candles, that's taking it to a whole new level.
For sure.
So the blog really emphasizes ditching paraffin wax, which is what most store-bought candles use. So what's the deal with that? Is paraffin really that bad?
Oh, think about it this way. Burning paraffin releases soot, just like burning anything else.
Yeah.
But it's what's in that soot that gets a little tricky. There are actually studies out there that have linked it to some pretty nasty stuff you definitely don't want in your air, especially if you're burning candles all the time.
Oh, wow. Okay, so natural waxes are the better way to go then.
Yeah.
The blog mentions soy wax and beeswax a lot.
Exactly. Soy wax is really popular because it burns clean and it's generally more sustainable than paraffin. And then there's beeswax, which is interesting because it's got this naturally sweet aroma and it actually burns longer too. The blog even suggests reusing old candle wax. Reduce, reuse, recycle.
I love that sustainability angle.
Yeah.
It's like you're not just creating a lovely ambiance, you're making a conscious choice for the planet too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so before we get too lost in all this warm glow, let's talk about the stuff we actually need to make these candles. I imagine sourcing the right materials is pretty important here.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things the blog stresses is choosing the right wick. Apparently, some wicks actually contain lead, which is obviously a huge no-no when you're burning them.
Wait, lead wicks? Really?
Yeah, it's scary. It's a good reminder to always double-check those labels, even for something as simple as a candle wick.
Wow, I never would have thought of that. So what should we be looking for instead?
Natural fibers are the way to go. Cotton or hemp wicks are great choices. And when it comes to containers, the possibilities are pretty much endless. You can repurpose old jars, mugs, even teacups. The blogger even uses milk cartons as molds, which I thought was really creative.
Ooh, that's so cool. Upcycling at its finest. I'm already starting to see how this can be a really personalized creative project.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our wax, our wicks, our containers. What are we missing? Ah, yes, the essential oils.
Yeah.
The heart of any good natural candle.
Exactly. That's where the aromatherapy aspect really comes in. Not only do they smell amazing, but different oils have different therapeutic properties. Lavender for relaxation, peppermint for focus. The blog really emphasizes using pure essential oils, no synthetic fragrances or additives.
That makes sense. We're going for natural and healthy here. I'm picturing rows of little brown bottles filled with all sorts of delicious scents. It's like a potion-making workshop for your senses.
Exactly. Speaking of potions, are you ready to see how this whole crockpot candle magic actually works? I'm kind of curious to see how she breaks down the process step by step.
All right, so the first thing she does is she combines the soy wax and the coconut oil in the crock pot.
Okay.
And it's literally like melting butter, just on a lower setting, of course.
Makes sense. And she uses a crockpot liner, right?
Smart move. I can already imagine what a pain it would be to try and clean up all that melted wax.
Oh, absolutely. Cleanup is definitely something you want to think about beforehand.
For sure.
Once that wax and oil are completely melted, she turns off the crock pot but keeps the lid on so everything stays nice and liquid. Then she prepares the jars by attaching the wicks to the bottom.
Okay, wait. So how do you actually get the wick to stay put down there? Is it like super glue or something?
You could use hot glue, but she actually recommends just using a little dab of hot wax. It's like a little anchor that keeps the wick centered when you pour the rest of the wax in.
Ah, that's clever. So then comes the fun part, right? Ladling that warm, fragrant wax into each jar.
Yep, exactly. It's very sensory for sure. And this is where you can really start to personalize things. She lets the wax cool slightly, then adds the essential oils, about 20 drops per jar.
Okay.
But she also encourages experimenting to find your perfect scent strength.
That makes sense. So like a lavender eucalyptus blend for a spa-like vibe, or maybe something citrusy for an energy boost? The possibilities are pretty much endless.
Exactly. And she mentions this one tip I thought was really clever. To keep those wicks centered while the wax is hardening, she attaches them to a little rod, like a pencil or a straw,
Oh, I see.
using tape or a clothespin.
So they don't end up all wonky and off to one side.
Exactly.
It's like a tiny scaffolding system for your candles. I love it. So once the wicks are all secure, then what? Do you just leave them out on the counter to cool?
You could, but she actually puts them in the oven.
Right.
With the oven off, of course.
Right, of course.
Just to keep them safe from any bumps or spills while they harden.
Make sense?
Then once that wax is completely solid, she trims the wicks to about 1/4 inch.
Okay. And that's probably important for getting a nice clean burn, right?
Exactly.
No giant sooty flames.
Nope. And then they're almost ready to go.
Almost. So there's more.
She really emphasizes letting the candles cure for at least 48 hours before burning them. Patience is key.
48 hours.
It lets the wax fully harden and the fragrance really meld. But of course, no DIY project is ever perfect. The blog is really honest about some common challenges you might run into.
Oh, like what? I'm already anticipating uneven burning and wax remnants stuck in the jars.
You got it.
Those are definitely classic candle problems.
She talks about how if a candle doesn't burn evenly that first time, it can actually develop a memory and continue to burn unevenly in the future.
Oh, really? Interesting. So first impressions really matter even for candles. So how do you prevent that from happening?
The key is that first burn. She says to make sure you burn a new candle for at least an hour, so that whole top layer of wax melts evenly.
Okay.
It sets the stage for smooth sailing down the road.
Good to know. I'm definitely guilty of blowing out candles too early. What about those pesky wax remnants? Any tips for getting those out of the jars?
She recommends freezing the jars to help the wax contract, or using boiling water to loosen it up. But she also talks about how those little imperfections are all part of the DIY charm.
True. It's like a little reminder that they're handmade with love, not mass-produced in a factory. And speaking of love, the blogger doesn't just focus on the practical side of things. She also talks about this deeper meaning of candle making.
Yes. She even shares a poem about being a light for others.
Oh.
It's this beautiful idea that creating something as simple as a candle can actually be an act of spreading positivity and illuminating the world around us.
That's so lovely. I'm already feeling inspired to get crafty and spread some light of my own.
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it?
It is.
It reminds us that even the smallest acts of creativity can have a ripple effect.
So we've covered the health benefits, the sustainability aspect, the creative possibilities. What's the final takeaway for our listeners? Why should they care about making their own natural candles?
Yeah, it really is more than just DIY. It's about taking control of what we bring into our homes, expressing our creativity, and maybe even spreading a little light along the way. I love that. It's about connecting with something tangible, something you create with your own two hands, you know, and that feeling of accomplishment, that pride in making something beautiful and healthy. It's powerful.
It really is. And you can't forget about the cost effectiveness either. Once you've got those basic supplies, you can make a whole bunch of candles for way less than you'd spend at a store.
Yeah, and you know exactly what's in them. No mysterious ingredients hiding on the label. It's a win-win situation.
Totally. So as we let this deep dive inspire our inner candle makers, I have one last question for you, dear listener. What scents and containers would you choose to reflect your unique personality?
Ooh, that's a good one. Would it be a cozy blend of cinnamon and vanilla in a rustic mason jar? Or maybe a refreshing mix of citrus and herbs in a sleek, modern container? Let your imagination run wild.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover a hidden talent for candle making. After all, we're all about exploring those hidden gems within ourselves here on the All Sorts podcast.
I love that. It's amazing how something as simple as a candle can spark so much creativity and joy.
And as that final flicker of candlelight dances in the darkness, remember to keep that spark of curiosity burning bright. If you enjoyed this illuminating deep dive, light up our channel too by liking, subscribing, and sharing the All Sorts podcast on YouTube. Join our constellation of curious minds on X, Instagram, and Threads, where we explore a universe of fascinating topics. And don't forget to check out our past episodes for even more deep dives into the world of art, culture, science, and beyond. Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep shining.